Time now for our Wall Street Week daily segment. Paul Krugman, he's the Nobel laureate in economic sciences. He actually sat down a little bit earlier with David Weston to discuss where we should be placing our concern when it comes to the U.S. government's growing debt. That's, of course, ahead of all of the debt ceiling discussions taking place. Take a listen.
There's a pretty strong case that debt is just a number, that the United States, absent, the political games over the debt ceiling, which is a really uniquely American dysfunction. Aside from that, there's no hint that financial markets are concerned about America's ability to service its debt. There's no real sign that the debt is putting any strain on the economy. U.S. debt is very high by our own historical standards. The only time we've been close to this level was in the immediate aftermath of World War II. But it's not that high compared with what a lot of other countries have experienced over the years without any kind of crisis. So, the numbers are enormous, but everything about the U.S. economy is enormous. So you say $31 trillion, and you do your best Dr. Evil imitation, but it's not at all clear that the debt is a top priority, that it's a catastrophic issue, or even that it even belongs in the top 5 or maybe even the top 10 of issues to concern the United States.
So maybe not catastrophic, but is it a growing problem in this sense? The debt itself is just one number. What about when you put it together with another number, which is debt service? Because as I understand it, part of the question is how fast is debt service cost growing? We have had essentially zero cost of debt service. Those are going up now. Does that pose a real risk?
Not really. I mean, first of all, you always want to remember that we do have, even if the Fed gets inflation back under control means 2%. So just right there, the debt is eroded in real terms by 2% of the total debt, which, since debt is roughly 100% of GDP, that means you want to subtract 2 points of GDP off, to real debt service is a lot lower than the headline number. And the headline number is not that high. The headline number on debt service is still, kind of what it was under George H.W. Bush. I mean, there just isn't the idea that that we're in some kind of debt spiral where we have to borrow to pay interest, and then we have to the numbers don't support that at all. The numbers don't suggest that anything like that is going to be a problem for the foreseeable future. So no, I mean, we've gone from a point where money was, free, or even in real terms, possibly the federal government was being paid to take on debt, to one where it costs something, but it's still pretty small.
Do we need to worry about the debt service crowding out other things that we might want to spend money on? I mean, there are some choices at some point to be made, I assume.
Yeah, the debt service is, however, a pretty small number, and and if we think about the things that we might want to spend on, many of them, I mean, the things that are really critical, which would be spending on children, which is very much at risk, spending on climate change. Those are actually, in important ways, they're investments. They're the kind of thing that you want to borrow to pay for, because they will, in the long run, probably even pay for themselves. And there's nothing, again, that says that, we do not have a debt level that is seriously interfering with our ability to pay for these things.
So let's talk about some of the proposals about how to avoid raising the debt too much, and that is some capping of spending, particularly discretionary spending. What are the possible consequences of that if, in fact, we do freeze or reduce spending off of 2022 levels?
The thing that concerns me most, I mean, partly we're just talking about the functioning of the government, right? We're talking about being able to get some money on the line. With the Social Security administrative costs, the IRS. It's not just that we're giving the IRS resources now that will help it crack down on tax evaders, and that's one of the things Republicans want to cut. The other thing is, if you have a question or a problem with your taxes, it's gotten suddenly a lot easier to get hold of somebody at the IRS, which was, still is to some extent, in desperate straits. But what really bothers me, where we are right now, is that the programs that apparently are sacrosanct are programs for the elderly. Medicare, Social Security are off the table. They're being protected. And a lot of the stuff that's discretionary is really things like programs that support children, that support education, that support nutrition for the young, which is the future. So what's happening right now is that in the effort to hold down headline spending right now, we're actually kind of disinvesting in the country's future, and that's pretty alarming.